Love, forever love, together love. Wherever love is found, we're found. We're found by His light. Love, forever love, together love. Whenever love is lived, we live. We live in His light. But the darkness does not know. The darkness does not know. The darkness does not know. It cannot win. Love, forever love, together love. Wherever love is found, we're found. We're found by His light. Love, forever love, together love. Whenever love is lived, we live. We live in His light. But the darkness does not know. No, the darkness does not know. Oh no, the darkness does not know. It cannot win. Forever shine, together shine. Whenever love is shown, we shine. We shine with His light. Shine, forever shine, together shine. Whenever love is shown, we shine. We shine with His light. But the darkness does not know. The darkness does not know. The darkness does not know. It cannot win. Isn't He beautiful? Beautiful, isn't He? Prince of Peace, the Son of God, isn't He? Isn't He? Isn't He? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. But the Spirit of God, the love of God, moved, hovered, brooded over the face of those deep, dark waters. And so still, and so always. Though it's still dark, there's still love. Be still. Lord, help us know how we're loved, how you have loved us. good morning, evening, night, whatever it is. I I had a nice Sunday afternoon nap. So I'm resurrected, refreshed, ready to go. Where am I going? I don't know. You know, as we move into John chapter 20, questions like, what now? What next? For my own life, it's a lot of times people ask me, so what now? What next? I ask myself that constantly. Go from one room to another. What am I here for? What am I doing? What do I do now? What's next? And you know, in those little things, that's where life happens. That's where we have the opportunity to realize stuff, especially the important stuff when we're worried about the lesser things. And in those times when we're in the dark, and that's really what this next couple of chapters starts with. Whatever the next couple of chapters in your life or my life might be, a lot of times it starts just like this chapter. It starts in the dark, while it was still dark, though it was still dark. And you know, I'm retired, so I always wear a hat. I don't need to comb my hair. I just put on a hat. I'm retired. And in some ways, retirement, you know, as I'm finding out, it feels a little like death in the sense that so many things that you used to do, you don't do this, you don't do that. Some of it's like, man, I'm glad. I don't want to do this or that again. But in other ways, you know, like a lot of things in life, changes can be hard. But I'm finding, kind of like this section of scripture, for me, it's not about being dead. Being retired isn't things being dead, it's things resurrected. It's things being brought to new life and fresh life. And everlasting life, things that can't be taken away from you. The truest of things, of course, they never can be taken away. And so, enjoying the life that God gives us, moment by moment, second by second, day by day. And it all starts just like every day. It starts while we're still in the dark. And for me, you know, I like to have a little bit of light, a little bit of comprehension, a little bit of a capacity to plan and look ahead and move forward. But you know, so often we're in the dark. And that's why I just really going to look at the first verse here today, just like the first verses of John, the first verses of Genesis. Those stories about while it was still dark. And yet, while it's still dark, there's still love. Before a command comes saying, let there be light, there's love. And that's what I posted, a week or so ago. I think it was, well, these are the things I was thinking about with Easter. I posted something, it said, basically, though it was still dark, there was still love. And long before any light could be seen, that love could be sensed, hovering, brooding, softly moving about. And long before any word had been spoken, that love could be heard, groaning, humming, sighing. The tender sounds of a still small voice in tones too deep for words. And though you're still in the dark, dear beloved, be still in the dark. It's those thoughts that have been moving through my mind, and it's what I see even here in this first opening section of John chapter 20. It begins here with Mary Magdalene. She's the muse. She's the focus. She's the one that we can look at, and what a perfect picture John paints. You know, it's not the only picture. So many different angles at which the writings can be written. Words can be expressed. But the way John compiles it, it's perfect for me for now. This picture with Mary Magdalene, center stage, still in the dark. It starts there now on the first day of the week. Mary Magdalene, while it was still dark, She came to the tomb. Again, she came early while it was still dark. And then she saw the stone already taken away from the tomb. But while it was still dark, there was already this movement. Before she moved out toward the tomb, there was something stirring inside of her. And that's a reality that gives me hope. John puts Mary Magdalene center stage at the cross. He hasn't introduced her as other gospel writers did. The woman who was the notorious sinner who somehow she lived with 7 demons. And Jesus had loved her and freed her. But John doesn't tell all of that story. He just all of a sudden presents her center stage there at the foot of the cross. And now here with resurrection. Again, she's set there, center stage. And in many ways, by putting her in the picture, in many ways, she's a worst case scenario. How could you be more lost, more lonely, more wounded than a woman like Mary Magdalene? In some ways, it's worst case scenario. It's a terrible story. I don't know her story hardly, but what little I know, it's like I can hardly begin to comprehend how terrible her story was, and yet how wonderful her story is. Because Jesus, the love of God, comes and calls her out. He comes to heal and to give her hope. And wow, as he does that for her, again, that gives great hope to me. And in John's gospel, if this was the only gospel that I had, that I could ever read, though I know nothing else about the story of Mary Magdalene, I almost feel like, kind of a deja vu sort of thing. I almost feel like I know her. Because John paints a different picture. I think a parallel picture. Not a Jewish woman, but a Samaritan woman. Again, John's gospel is all of these personal encounters. And John chapter 4 is all about that Samaritan woman, who again, her story, much like Mary Magdalene, she was a sinner, of course, aren't we all, but her sin brought her into a place of isolation and loneliness, and Jesus meets her there midday at the well, and yet though it's midday, it was darkness in the life of that woman. And that Samaritan woman who needed water at the deepest levels of her soul, Jesus saw, Jesus knew. And he met her, and he satisfied her. And she came out of all of her darkness. She no longer worried about whether she had the light and the intellect and the understanding of which mountain do we worship at and which religious tradition is the truest. That's not the point. You come out of that. She came out of her cloisters and her caves and her protective places, and she came to him at the end of John 4, and not only did she come out of the community she grew up in, she brought that community out with her just by her enthusiasm and joy. Come see the one who knows my story, who knows me most fully. So with Mary Magdalene there in chapter 4, you get this sense of what the love of God can do in the loneliest and most isolated of people. And now with Mary Magdalene, it's, again, same Savior working in a different woman, in a different way. And as I think of all those things, I want to remember to see as Jesus sees and to treat people as Jesus treats people. The true focus, you want to really see or understand the true focus for a life, your life, isn't your past problems. That's not who you are, maybe what you've done or where you've been, but the true focus is never the past problems. Too often we tend to look at, focus on, we label, we judge, we say that's the category you fit into, or that's who I am. And we do that based upon our past. The things that you've been, that's who you are. Or we do it upon our problems. I'm one of those, that's my problem, that's somehow my identity. Or we do it based upon your pedigree, your line of ancestry, Samaritan, Jew, Gentile, slave, free, whatever. We judge based on that. We categorize or position, what place on the ladder, on the social scale you are. That's how we look at, that's how we identify, that's how we label, that's how we judge, and all of that is so superficial. And Jesus instead teaches us to deal with the present. And though we're in the dark, his love is with us. And if we respond to that love, he calls us out to a future. We all have a past. That's not who we are. We have a future. And it's beautiful. But the present, that's the gift. That's the holy now. That's right here and now. Where the Spirit of God is working with us, even in the dark. And that's the idea. The whole sense of how the Bible begins. Formless and void. In a deep darkness. And yet, before light shines, love moves. Love hovers. Love is there. And that's what I see even here in this story. As I see Mary Magdalene moving forth from the place where she is. Before she goes out to the garden tomb, she's in the room, wherever it was that she slept, in that place, and she's moving about, and even there, long before she saw the risen Savior, and thought at first that he was the gardener, long before she saw him and then clung to him, like, I'm never going to let you go again, it's very clear he had never let her go, for the very one that was moving her to get up early, and to have some kind of hope, there in the darkness. It was him. It was the Spirit of love. It was the Spirit of Christ that was stirring her. Though she was worried and though her hopes were so low, but at least I'm going to do something today. I'm going to do something loving for the one who loved me so much. And all of that, those things are the stirrings of Christ. We wouldn't feel those things. We wouldn't be moved in that way if he weren't moving within us. And so it's those things that I think of. The love of God that shines in the darkness and moves us out of our places where we were imprisoned, where we were as though dead. We move out. And the light comes because the love was there first. It says there in chapter 20, verse 1, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came early to the tomb while it was still dark. And then she saw the stone already taken away from the tomb. And so she ran. And she came to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and said to them, they have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have laid him. Here she is, obviously terrified. Sometimes in life you think things can't get worse. But you're wrong. Things can always get worse. That's why it's a bottomless pit. But things can get better by turning your focus to the one who's with you in the dark. Mary hadn't done that yet. I'm not criticizing her. I'm just reminding myself that, look, things can always get worse. And for her right now, she's feeling like, what could have been worse? Well, this is worse. Now they've taken that. It's not a joyous message. The tomb is empty. It's panic. The tomb is empty. And so she runs and tells this story. And again, even before I move ahead to think on that, I just want to reflect on the fact that for us today, the symbol of hope, an open tomb, the fact that the door is removed, that the tomb is open, an empty tomb, an open tomb, that's a symbol. It's a symbol that's hard to put on a necklace and wear it as a symbol of Christianity, but that's a symbol of triumph. The empty tomb. For her at the moment, that picture was a symbol of tragedy. Because again, she didn't comprehend. Sometimes we can't comprehend. There's no light. But there's a love that will turn these tragedies, some of the worst things we've ever felt we had to face, the triumph that we now know. And here for her, she's thinking, this is worse than I could have imagined. And sometimes that's a problem. You know, it's good to have hopeful thoughts, but sometimes our hopeful thoughts are just not hopeful enough. And it's good to remember that God does exceeding abundantly beyond all we can ask or hope or think. He surpasses our imaginations. And I would think that Mary, the consolations she was taking as she was getting ready, moving about, going to the garden to bring a few more flowers, a few more things, gifts of love to the tomb of Jesus. I would imagine her thinking was, you know, as bad as it is, at least I can go back to where his body is laid. At least I can go back to a place, and though I can't get him back, I can go back and I can remember, and I have this place of memorial and a place of, you know, like we often talk about, the closure. It's closed. It's not, of course, but you feel like, okay, at least we've got the body. At least we've got a corpse. At least we've got a place I can come to. And now all those at least, all those at least are gone. You know, they're little trinkets, they're little tokens, but they're her last little treasures of him. And now somebody's taken those away. But again, if ever you feel that way, you say, I thought at least I had this and now I've lost that. No. You have so much more at least than at least. You have so much more than you can imagine. And here she is, just no doubt panicked, at least for the moment. And she runs in fear to tell the disciples. And what good does it do? I don't blame her, but I don't think it did her any good at all. I don't think they were the ones that could help. Or I don't think other people in times like that can help. But at any rate, she does what we all tend to do. She runs in fear. And it's interesting to me, the first going forth of the gospel begins in fear. They don't realize just how good the good news is. Whenever I hear the gospel running on fear, being preached in fear, I realize that whoever's doing the running and doing the preaching doesn't realize how good the good news is. It's not a fear message. It's hope for anyone who wants hope. It's life and love, eternal. But this is how it begins. It's how we begin all the time. How ignorant, how in the dark we can be. On the first day of the week, that's how it began. She came early while it was still dark. And she saw the empty tomb and she panicked. She saw the open door and she ran in fear. That's what I want to read and just think about. It's what I've been thinking about for a couple of weeks now. And I encourage you to think about that love that's with you always. A couple of lessons that I've been trying to glean and learn from. A few things I'll leave with you in this little time that we have together. First of all, an open door. The open doors inside of us, the ways in which we open up, those are essentials. And it may be very uncomfortable, it may be very frightening to open up. A lot of times the idea of an open door, the stone's been rolled away and the door is open, that becomes oh my goodness, thieves and robbers. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. What's going to come through? My place of protection has now been opened. So much hunkering down in fear. And in Jesus, in walking in love, so much freedom. So that first symbol, that first picture, the open door, at first it was fear and panic, but the fact is it's opportunity. And I'm finding for myself is a lot of securities and things that I surround, solid things that I surrounded myself with and that I saw as stone, impregnable, hard, fast. I'm finding with the passage of time and with growth and maturation on my part that a lot of those things are not the securities I thought they were, and some of them are, in fact, imprisonments. An openness is an essential thing. We're not called to be cavemen, to be hiding in our caves, to be having our places of security inside of this group, inside of this church, inside of this system, inside of this set of doctrinal beliefs. And oh my goodness, if you don't have all of that, the frog in the kettle and the slippery slope and the lions and tigers and bears, oh my, all the no. Ask, seek, knock. Be open. Let love lead you. Who was Mary following? She didn't know it. She was following Jesus. Who did she run to in her fear? How did they help her? No. She comes out because Jesus came out. He came out of his cave. He came out of that place because caves are fine for corpses. They can rest there. But living people have to come out and be out and move with people in the scary places and meet with people in the scary places. And just like the woman of Samaria, she came out and found her fulfillment. The water wasn't down in that deep well. The water was starting to flow inside of her. That's what Jesus can do for people. And so this whole idea of letting go of some fear, opening up, moving out in faith, so you don't see all the protective things around you anymore, it's essential. It's what I'm finding just in some ways in regard to being retired. But in some ways I think these are lessons for my eternal retirement. Because it's adventure and glorious learning and many works to work on, but labors of love, every bit of it. And moving out in that fashion. I mean, one day I'll be moving out of my body. And it's a good thing. I find myself often humming and singing songs from the 60s and 70s. They're stuck in my brain, and some of them, there's one set of lyrics by Cat Stevens, I'm on the road to find out. And that lyric that says, Lord, my body has been a good friend, but I won't need it when I reach the end. And so there's been I've had a lot of good friends, and my body's been a good friend. I've been in a lot of good places. I've experienced some good worship and good community inside those places, but the places are not my security. Coming out of those and moving into places not from one cave to another cave, but moving out in a way where you're free to move and where you're free to operate in love. That's always the most essential of things. It's not a scary thing, even though it may be a scary thing. Have faith in him who is wherever we would meet him. He's not limited as we are. And then the second thing, first is that whole idea of just the open door, the open heart, the open mind, free thinking, free loving and experiencing of love. That's the first thing. The second is what I think was Mary Magdalene's panic. Her fear was that the Lord has lost his resting place. She runs to Peter and John. They've taken him, and we don't know where they've laid him. And her greatest fear, it seems, was for him, as though, further desecration to his precious body, somebody doing further harm to him. How horrid that must have felt. And now he's lost his resting place. So often the R.I.P., rest in peace, and now his resting place. But you know what? It wasn't his resting place. We know that. Now she thought, at least for her, at least I have a resting place. place. What was her resting place going to be? I can come back to that garden tomb for the rest of my life. And I can at least have some kind of rest and some kind of peace knowing that there's my beloved. And she now feels like I've lost that, but you know what? How meager that food was, how meager that treasure would be. Yes, it's gone. It's good, it's gone. There's something so much more than those kinds of memorials. You know, that memorial of a tomb, you know, nicely carved, a rich man's tomb. To have that as her memorial place to return to for him, that's really no loss. It was too small for her. It's too small for love. It's too small, too limited. It doesn't matter if it's a rich man's burial place. A burial place is no place to put your memories. Because memories live. Memories of love, they go on. And we need to go on with those memories and love and further love and realize that the best that's been, we'll see it again. Of course we will. Of course we will. Of course. I like graveyards, I like monuments, I like memorials, but only because I realize that there is resurrection, there is life. And that's not all I'm limited to. The shrine isn't a great Taj Mahal or a giant pyramid. The shrine is inside of us when we no longer have a place to go back to, and that's the holy place. No, the holy place is every place when we let the light shine inside of us. He lives. Love lives inside of me. The best loves I've known, the best love I've experienced, it lives inside of me, in my family, in my past, in my friends. Those things are never gone. They go on, and I'll go on with that, in that love. And it's that second thing. The resting place is it's never a place. Unless that place is inside of you, like the kingdom itself. And then resting in that peace, you move out for the rest of your life. And then you rest in peace for the rest of eternity. Because again, that's the way love works. And then the last thing is really the first thing. It's the one that I've just been thinking about there in that opening line. While it was still dark. While it was still dark. So often, after all of this information, after all of this research, after all the work I've done, after all of I'm still in the dark. I still don't know 5 seconds into the future. I'm still not sure about that. I still don't. Well, you know what? While it was still dark, there was still love. And that's the hope to hold on to. That's the hope that holds on to you. Long before the light shines. And it will shine. You'll see. Of course you'll see. But long before the light shines, love moves. And it doesn't move far sometimes. You're still in the dark. But like the picture of the Spirit of God, the love of God there at the very beginning of the Bible, the Spirit of God hovered, brooded, quivered, hummed. I don't know what other words, I can't think of any better ones right now, but it's that whole idea of vibration of you're moving, but you're not moving anywhere. You're going, but you're not, kind of like the, oh, that frustrates me. But you know what? If it's love that's moving you, even if you're doing that, even if you seem to be going nowhere, if you're going with love, and if you know that love will someday, maybe sooner than you think, say, let there be light, then you'll see. But in the meantime, move with love. Even if you're going nowhere, you're going somewhere. In groanings, too deep for words. Words haven't come yet. Light hasn't come yet. But that's how the Spirit moves. Move with the Spirit. I like to hum. It can be annoying for anyone else that's around you. But like prayer itself, it's not to put on a show. But to myself, I find myself often, some of my best prayers are I'm just humming. Just that soft vibration of the human body. I remember my mom, she hummed. I probably remember what I don't really really remember, but probably somewhere in my brain I must remember as a baby, and her holding me close and humming. And I'm going to get all sentimental here. but it's those roots that are a part of that living tree, and the proof of life is the fruit. Love is patient, love is kind. Love isn't jealous, boastful, arrogant, rude. It's not quick-tempered, and it doesn't stew and take account of a wrong suffered. It bears all things, believes all things, endures all things. Because love it never fails. Love wins. And so, move with love. Even if you seem to be going nowhere. Though it's still dark, there's still love. Move with that love. However far love would take you. And it may take you right out of your cave and right out of your cloister and right out of your comfort zone, but that's okay. Because that's what we want anyway. It's an adventure. Love will take us places where nothing else would or could. And love supplies the fuel for a future that never ends. And so I would just encourage you to look to the one you can't see. Look to him in love. Let him move you. Lord, help my friends. Help me.